everyone, and welcome back to the channel. So glad to have you joining us today. It's episode 3 in how to be a good iron daddy. Now, so if you have an iron meteorite in your collection and it's not rusting, you haven't been collecting meteorites long enough. We're checking in with our very special guest, Craig Zlimen. I've been calling him Zlimen for the last 5-6 years, so it's really hard to change and start calling him by his real name of Zlimen. So Craig Zlimen, Minnesota Meteorites in the house. Thanks for joining us, buddy.
My pleasure. And I don't think it's right. You're calling me the special guest if you can't pronounce my name correctly. I feel like maybe, never mind. Inappropriate.
Wow. And thank you guys. Have a great week. We're out of here. No, as you guys know, this is our third episode into irons. The first one was how to get surface rust taken care of. The second one was how to get deeper down rust taken care of. And now that we have your meteorite stabilized, it's ready for the next step. And Craig, share with us these next steps. And please don't hold back any secrets. You said you wouldn't.
I'll let it all out. All right. So first, thanks for joining us again. This is probably going to be the most fun part for most people. It's also going to be the most challenging part. So I'm going to reiterate what we said with the last show, and that is irons are really indestructible. So don't be afraid to experiment. If you mess it up, it's fixable. Refollow the steps, start over, do it again until you get a better result. You're going to find that you will naturally find little tweaks as you do things. You'll notice that as you're etching, you hit a point where, ooh, maybe that was a more brilliant etch than when I kept going, so I'll do less. Or, wow, wait a minute, I over etched that, but ooh, that looks really cool now. So play with it, have fun. Irons are very, very durable. Wouldn't play with palladites. Irons are very durable, and the thicker they are, the more durable they are. But even thin cut irons can take real beatings. So I would say, if you have any interest in doing it, enjoy yourself, have fun, experiment. And there's nothing cooler than when you cut an iron and you get to see the pattern for the very first time.
Yeah, when people see an etch happen for the first time or the 20th time, it's an amazing thing. So back to you.
Yeah, it's cool. It's fun, and agree 100% on all counts. I will say before we get started, I'm going to go through the list of supplies, but the number one thing you have to have, there goes my heater. Good gloves. These are surgical gloves. They don't dissolve. And they go, well, normally high. More importantly, clothing. Look at this. You have to have the Christmas socks, and you got to have the hat. But very genuinely, the reason is everything you're going to use will bleach your clothes. And if I could even pretend to know the budget I've gone through in clothes, like I come home quick from someplace and I just need to etch something or just need to clean something, and I go to do it and I try to be careful, and I walk in the house and my wife says, "You ruined that shirt. Wear crap. This is lovely. It's not a beauty contest. I mean, let's be honest. It's not a contest, but if it were, it's not a beauty contest, and you really are gonna be getting dirty." Thank you, somebody, for laughing at that. It was a little heavy for a moment.
They're all on mute.
All right. So number one advice, good gloves, because the acid we're using is smelly, good ventilation. This one, ventilation counts. I'll tell you my little mishap earlier. Ventilation, good gloves, crappy clothes. And then from a standpoint of supplies, you don't need a lot. I buy in bulk nitric acid. And I dilute this myself. So you can see that's about 67%. That is way too strong to etch with. It'll just burn the iron very, very quickly. Is that going to kill your iron? Absolutely not. You just have to sand it down quick, redo it with a more dilute solution. But you're going to need nitric acid. You can buy nitol pre-mixed, 10, 20, 30%. If I were going to give you a favorite, I'd say 20. But I like to be able to mix because some I want to do deep etches, some I don't want to do deep etches. Some respond better to a higher acidic concentrations, some lower. Some are really slow to etch, and so I use a higher concentration of nitric. So I like having the freedom to play around. But for safety's sake, not having to mix it, not having to store it mixed, and just generally ease of use, you can go online and buy 20% nitric, and that would be my suggestion. Some guys use 10, even 5, but at 5%, you're going to get a sore arm by the time you get anything etched. It will work, but it's slow. I used denatured alcohol as a mix with the nitric acid. That's what I diluted in, as well as what I use it to finish off with when I'm drying it out before I take it and put it in the oven.
And this is always something that's perplexed me. There's another etchant that has chloride in its name. We just did everything we possibly could to get chlorides out of our piece. Now some people rub chlorides in. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
So the two major etchants are ferric chloride, which is what you're talking about, and nitric acid. Ferric chloride, it universally is considered to be a better etch. It is more holographic. It is very surface. It does not leave any marks in the iron. But ferric chloride, FeCl3, is literally the second step in the oxidation process. So you skip the whole first step of needing oxygen and water and chlorides, and you just go right to ferric chloride, FeCl3, which then touches iron and oxygen, and you wind up with hydrochloric acid and water. and that's then you have a self-perpetuating ruster. Doesn't matter if it was stabilized, because it's creating its own acid as it goes, and it's going to keep eating away your meteorite. I am the first to say that was my etchant of choice. It's fast, it doesn't smell, it stains everything, but it's super easy to use. But no matter what we did, I could not stabilize, I could not keep an iron from rusting after we etched it with that. Iron's known to be completely stable, rusted, after we etched it with ferric chloride. And so I finally bit the bullet, and I started experimenting with nitric acid, which is a little more complicated, a whole lot stinkier. And it's a very comparable etch when you get good at it, but it takes a lot of practice. So stay away from ferric chloride is my advice. And I apologize to everybody who I used to say ferric chloride is wonderful. I thought it was wonderful, and it is wonderful right until a month or 2 or 3 later, when your rusting piece that you spent months stabilizing is falling apart. So avoid ferric chloride. Nitric acid is also acid. Should be neutralized. We're going to show you how to do that, but it is a far milder acid on the iron than ferric chloride, which becomes its own self-propagating rust.
Awesome. Thanks for hitting on that. Appreciate
it. Nitric acid. This is so I'm going to mix this in a minute, and you should, if you're mixing it, which again I don't recommend. I would buy it pre-mixed. You're supposed to put the alcohol in and pour the acid into the alcohol. So if it splashes, it will be alcohol splashing, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
So I do have alcohol in here now, and we're gonna add our acid in a minute. Acid is stinky, and because it's like 0 degrees outside, at the moment there isn't a lot of ventilation, so we're gonna mix that right at the bitter end. Next, this is all steps, superwash soda, and you can see it floating around in here. There's a fair amount in there. We're gonna use that to stabilize the iron after it goes in the acid. Then I have just another straight up, this was just washed and cleaned. I know it looks dirty, but this is a clean plastic container. And again, garbage is great. All you need is something that isn't going to melt or rust away or whatever. So these are all like old drawers from old plastic things. And I don't even know what this, probably a toy. Use crappy stuff because you're going to ruin it. So this is just water. So we're going to rinse it and neutralize it, rinse it off. Then I'm going to dry it. Paper towels. Paper towels, it is as important as this. You will go through a lot of paper towels if you do a lot of etching. Keep them handy. And then alcohol, which is our last step before we take it and etch it, or dry it rather, excuse me. I use a paintbrush to apply the acid, and brush size, this is huge. That's what I have, but we're also going to be doing a couple of big pieces, so it's a little easier to get even coverage. Again, rust cutter. If you come over, you'll see these are already sprayed with rust cutter, and these were already stabilized. This one was stabilized for a long, long time, and the sort of dark color film that you see on there is actually leftovers from the stabilization process. This finished in iron, so it was a little cleaner, and I've cleaned it somewhat. But when they come out of stabilization with even galvanic, but particularly if you're using graphite blocks, man, they're black. I mean, they are absolutely black. So give them a good spray with this, and that will clean off the black. It also helps if they're, prevent any rust formation deep in the cracks. And when you etch it, this all gets washed away. So it doesn't really matter. And then last, we have CLR. CLR is important for the very last step. We talked about this briefly in the last episode. This is for your prep. This is going to prevent rust up until you etch it. After you etch it, when you inevitably, even the most stable irons will get some browning from the acid. CLR is what you want to use to get that off. It's just surface rust. CLR is not a rust converter. This is a rust converter. This is just a cleaner. And this will leave your iron nice and pristine. It will be brilliant, shiny, sparkly. It'll look nice. This will dull your iron. You can use it. You can leave it on, but it will make it dark. So I generally, when I'm done etching, will go back to CLR as a final cleaner. And then when you're done with CLR, then you have to wash it off with with alcohol again to make sure you get all the CLR off. Otherwise, CLR later down the road will rust. But CLR is very easy to clean off. Any questions before we get started on the business?
All right, while we're waiting for electronic hands to go up, I'm going to go on my sales soapbox. This is episode 3. If you are watching this and have watched episode 1 and 2 and you cannot wait for me to stop talking so you can watch the rest of episode 3, then you are someone who has probably or should have already bought a meteorite from Minnesota Meteorites or from Troubleshooting Meteorites. That's the best way to support us and what we're trying to do. I also have a Patreon membership page that is a great way to support our ongoing education efforts. But the education and outreach and the value that we're adding right now to your meteorite knowledge, no other dealers are doing this. Craig's the master at it, and I'm just have a platform for him to use. So this is one of these things where you can step forward and say, look, hey, I buy meteorites. I want to reward dealers who are leaders in what they're doing, whether it's education and outreach or just sharing these secrets with you. It'd be really super cool if you would show your appreciation that way. I know Craig would appreciate it, and I know I would appreciate it as well. And I'm done.
Now, the bristles are plastic. They are unaffected by the acid. I would very, very sternly say you have to do this in a well-ventilated area. Smell is bad. It's bad for you, and it will cause everything to corrode around you, even just in the ambient air. This is not something you want to do in your house. This is not something you want to do in the basement. This is something you really want to do outside, or buy an exhaust fan. Your bristles will hold up fine. Your metal will rust very, very quickly. And if a piece falls off and gets in your acid, it will continue to react in that acid and very, very quickly get hot, boil, and stinky, which is exactly what happened right before we did this episode. So do be careful. You need to have good ventilation. When you're done, I neutralize the brush as well. So when I'm done with the acid, and I'm done neutralizing, and I'll throw this in the neutralizing bucket and just let it sit, because otherwise you're just going to keep causing reaction with the iron.
I have a question regarding the felt, the black felt, like painting things that you use around like window jams. I've seen some people apply the etchant with those. Your feelings on the foam brush?
I don't know much about foam paintbrushes, and the reason is when I started with ferric chloride, you can't use a foam paintbrush or it doesn't work well, because ferric chloride is such a light etch that whatever you drag it across, you can leave marks. And I found that foam brushes made an imperfect etch. It's probably fine to use with nitric acid, and it probably would avoid the sting. I should try that. This is just habit. I've always used a paintbrush, but I'm sure a foam brush would probably be a better situation. The only thing is, you want to be careful, because if you leave it soak long enough, most of the foam brushes have a wooden handle, and that acid will creep up. And this acid will burn your skin. Ferric chloride doesn't burn your skin. This stuff will take your skin off. I have a permanent scar under here. I had leaned on a bucket, and it had just a little bit of acid around the edge. By the time I felt the pain, the skin was gone. And now it's just a big scar. So you do have to be careful. It does require some real attention to detail. Overall, it's not dangerous if you do it correctly. You want to just minimize the amount of time you're exposed to the acid, have a good ventilation, and then make sure you neutralize everything when you're done. And you'll see how that works momentarily. By and large, nitric in it with a clean paintbrush or a plastic brush, you're going to be fine. Again, ventilation matters. Also, I don't wear eye protection. I would recommend you wear eye protection, and gloves, good gloves are a must. You're not messing around with with this stuff. It will burn your hands. It will burn your clothes. It will burn everything. So just know that, you have to take appropriate steps to protect yourself. Nitric acid is a real deal, and you don't want to mess around.
Awesome. Well, I'm super pumped to see our demonstration here, because what I find absolutely amazing about the etching process is we know how many thousands and hundreds of thousands of years it takes for this pattern to arrive or to be created in these meteorites, and it's such a long cosmic process. But what Craig's going to do right in front of us is kind of like a magic trick. He's going to reveal all that beauty within like 40 seconds to a minute.
That's the goal. Yeah, so just as a point of curiosity, yes. So Widmanstätten patterns don't exist in terrestrial iron, and that's because they cool too quickly here on Earth. If our core was exposed after the planet is dead, you would find a Widmanstätten pattern. It takes 1 degree C cooling rate of 1 degree C every 10,000 years or slower to create the pattern. Most are 1 degree C every million to 3 million years, and some even longer. The faster it cools, generally, and there are other factors, but the faster it cools, the more narrow the band. So Gibeon would have been probably a faster cooling, although nickel content also matters. And then you look at like a Sakota-Lin, which has huge crystals with probably a bigger parent body that cooled a little more slowly with other factors. So that's your meteorite pattern lesson for the day. And now we'll get cracking.
What is the grid of preparation right now on the iron?
240.
240.
I
Okay.
rarely do higher than 240. So this is another caveat with nitric. With ferric chloride, I would go to 3,000, because if you left any marks at all, any sand marks, you would see those. It is not true with nitric acid. And in fact, I found that rougher surfaces produce a more brilliant etch with nitric acid. So the more rough, in other words, if you take it straight off the saw and you etch it, many times that's the most beautiful etch you're going to get. So
Wow.
what I've done is dramatically decrease the amount of prep time and just gone to 240 as a start and a finish. Just make sure it's even. That's the trick. You need it to be even. You want it to look all one color, and you can see actually there's a little bit of etch left over underneath and various chemicals, cleaning chemicals will also leave a very light etch, but that's what you're seeing. But what you see is a nice even sanding job. So if half of it is shiny and half of it is rough, it's going to look funny. If it's all rough, it'll look great. If it's all shiny, it'll look great. But 240 is where I stop, and you're going to see why here right now. I mix my acid. It's nice and clean. I don't see any bubbling. That's good. Doesn't stink yet. It will. One of the things I will say is this wasn't practiced, and I mean I practice it every day, but I haven't. I just mixed this now. It may take some adjusting. Be careful. I will set this in there, but only on a tip. You don't want a line where the etchant comes up the iron, because it will leave a line. So then again, now this is where you got to be careful. It will splash. I've wiped off the rust remover. And you're seeing it's going to get a little bit of a yellow color as we paint it on. That's completely normal and expected. So you literally just brush it on, make sure it goes on nice and even, don't miss any spots. Go slow. You can see when it drips back down into the pan, it's quite dirty. I have mixed this with alcohol, so it evaporates fairly quickly. And so what you'll find is areas where if you leave it sit, it'll look quite dark. If we leave it sit here for a minute, it'll look heavily etched. And then you go down and refresh it, and it cleans it up very, very quickly.
Wow.
So if you let it sit, the acid gets stronger just by virtue of evaporation. So I will do that for a minute and just kind of take it easy. The other way to really catalyze this process is heat. So if you take this out of the oven, and I would not do it at 170 degrees, I would let it cool down a lot. Or you take a heat gun and it's warm to the touch, and then you go and do this, it will etch instantaneously. In fact, it will probably scare you because it will look very, very dark until you take a more dilute acid and wipe it over, and then the darkness goes away and it's nice and bright again, but it's a good deep etch. So this is ice cold. It's not warm in this garage. So it's taking a bit longer than average, but you get the idea.
Oh,
All right,
it's
so we're going to
fucking
turn it around.
gorgeous, man. It never ceases to amaze me.
And the other side is going to continue to etch while we start working on this side. And you'll see that when we go back. So again, we're just going to paint it nice, get it all. You're going to find that there's a lot of black areas and stuff that will all disappear once the acid starts working. And it's getting warmer. You'll notice that happens. The reaction is exothermic, as Scott said. So you will notice a temperature change. We'll let that side sit. Now we'll come back and do this side again. So 2 ways to speed this up: heat, and I could mix it a little heavier. I wasn't sure, but we'll leave it because it's also not killing us with the smell, which is good.
Is this the concentration that you would like, or would you have liked it a little bit stronger?
I'd probably go a little thicker, honestly, a little heavier, a little more rich.
And would that be evident by a more striking, faster etch, or could you see that in the yellowing of it as it's drying on there?
All of the above. If you go strong enough, it'll bubble right on the meteorite, which is not what you want. But let's see. So watch yourself, honey. We'll just make it a tad stronger.
This is an advanced Craig move. Do not try it home.
Right. Pretty much, if I'm doing it, you don't want to try it at home. I think that's just the general rule. It's only 70% out of the bottle. So I usually use 100. This is we're getting down to the end of our stocks. So we'll let that side sit, go back to the other side one more time. We're going to call that etch for now. And actually, if you feel it, it is a fairly deep etch. I'm going to take and I'm going to wipe it off. You don't have to wipe it off. I'm wiping it just to sort of save my neutralizer. Okay. So some people will say, hey, I just use baking soda. Baking soda doesn't really neutralize it. Watch what happens when you put nitric acid into sodium carbonate.
Wow.
It reacts. And what you're doing is neutralizing that acid. It turns it green. And that's how you know that you're neutralizing your acid.
Yeah, I've never seen that with baking soda. Correct.
Doesn't happen with baking soda. So you are really avoiding what you need to. The entire goal is to neutralize. And baking soda, it will to some extent. It breaks down into sodium carbonate, but at a much lower rate and a lower level. So, all right. So you want to make sure you get all the green off. Green is a good way of helping to see where there's stuff left over.
Wow.
This one now I'm going to just put in the water. This is clean water for no particular reason other than to make sure I don't get any acid in my alcohol. Now, I'm actually going to change gloves. If you get anything on your paper towel, even if it's microscopic and you can't see it, it will ruin your iron. Later on, you're going to find streaks everywhere a piece of dirty paper towel touched your iron. So you see it looks a little brown. Again, normal after working with nitric acid. So what we're going to do is come over here to our CLR. And I'm pretty liberal with the CLR. So I'll take it on my thing, and then I just wipe it all the way around. Let it get bubbly. And all your brown goes away. Okay, so now you have a nice rust-free, shiny meteorite. And then I'm going to take one more paper towel and just dry it. Get as much of the CLR off manually as I can. And then we're going to put it in the alcohol. And I'm going to rub it. Make sure we get all the CLR off. Then I'm going to dry my hands without touching the outside of the paper towel. You go through a lot of paper towel. Then I'm gonna take a new paper towel, take this out, and I'm gonna dry it as best I can. Make sure you get the edges. What I find is the edges will dribble and cause staining around the iron where there was some residual rust or whatever from the crust.
Wow.
And that's your finished rust-free product that goes in the oven. Most important step is
That is
put this
beautiful.
in the oven immediately, or warm it up with a heat gun and then put it in the oven. Because there is still moisture deep in those cracks and you need to get that out. So this will go in the oven just at 170 degrees and sit for 24 hours. But that is a stabilized etched alloy that should stay rust free for, well, it's going to Georgia, so we'll see how we'll see.
Wow, that is fantastic, man.
You're going to leave it in your oven 24 hours. I cannot stress that enough. I'm talking to a guy who's been doing this for 30 years, who is, I actually had to pay him for suggestions because he's now retired, but he was willing to share, sort of. And that's who I learned the rust cutter trick from. Most valuable thing I've ever learned. Drying is the second most valuable thing I've ever learned. I usually, if I weren't demonstrating, I would have a heat gun here and I would get these hot right away. And then I put them in the oven and I'd leave them in for 3 hours. 3, 4, there wasn't a specific time, but a few hours. Take them out, let them cool, spray them, and think, woohoo. Even stabilized irons would rust in the cracks, and it drove me nuts. This guy said you have to let it stay warm and dry for 24 hours. You've got to keep it in heat for 24 hours. And oh my God, my problem is solved. It is amazing what a difference it makes. You just can't get water out of the deep crevices in less than that, not adequately. So I always use Rust-Oleum products, not because I love Rust-Oleum, but because it's oil-based instead of water-based. And this is cheap. It's lacquer. It's good for anything. It's good for wood. It's good for iron. It's good whatever. This is usually what I use. Sometimes I'll use the Rust-Oleum wheel, which is way more expensive, a little 2.5 times the same or cost. That's because the spray nozzle on this is a wide arc. And so if I'm doing a big piece, instead of having to just go back and forth 1,000 times and try to keep up with myself, it's just a nice wide spray. So it's worth it for the finish. But in most pieces you use, this is going to be just fine.
I know that we're condensing this for time, just like a baking show on a talk show. But
yeah,
the one important step that you have not showed us today is the baking it for 24 hours without early retirement.
Correct. You can use a hot plate if you want to set it in the garage on a hot plate on low. That's fine. Heat for 24 hours in a dry environment. Got to do it.
Okay. All right.
Everything you watched is as I do it, except like I said, I would separate the etch and the initial neutralization into a different part of the shop so that there's no cross-contamination of acids with the final steps. Outside of that, what you saw is exactly what I would do.
Awesome. Thank you.
By the way, after 24 hours, if it isn't stable or there was a little bit of moisture left, usually in cracks, again, come back with your CLR and just rub it and then wipe it again with alcohol. It shouldn't be invasive. It should just be a quick fix. But the heat for 24 hours also catalyzes the rusting process. So if there is any imperfection, you'll see it. So we're going to pretend this is 24 hours dry. Again, well-ventilated area. I would take a gloved hand, but I'm not going to walk out of the frame to get a gloved hand, and we're going to clean this again anyway. This is really important. Wipe it. You take a fresh, clean gloved hand and get the dust off. Otherwise, it's lumpy and it looks terrible. You can also use what are called tack rags. Tack rags you can get at any auto parts store, Home Depot. They are basically a wax rag that is made to pull dust off. Either is fine. A hand is fine. I would not use a bare hand normally because you have oil on your skin, and I don't do that. But again, this is going to be refinished afterwards. So we're going to pretend I'm wearing gloves, and then we've wiped it clean. It's dried, and now we're just going to quick go over it And I know not everybody loves coating, and that's fine. You don't have to coat it. But if you don't coat it, don't touch it with bare hands. I take these all over the place. So I coat everything. If you want to remove the coating, just simply wiping it with lacquer thinner will take the coating off. And it doesn't hurt the iron, so there's no harm in coating it. And then if the owner, the ultimate owner, wants to take that off, then you're fine to do that. But that's your finished product. And I haven't done the backside yet, but we're actually going to put this in the oven, so I'm not going to do the backside right now. But that's it. That's your finished product.
As you were saying, you would normally coat the back as well. Do you normally etch both sides?
I do. Even if it's not finished, I will still etch both sides.
When you say
because
finished,
even if
what
it's
do you
not
mean?
finished, what's that?
When you say finished, what does that mean to you?
Not sanded, straight off the saw.
Okay.
Now, keep in mind, wire saw is different than like a lapidary saw. Oh, I got to move out of the way. I'm going to go. Hang on, I'll go back to my place. Sorry.
Awesome.
Oh, that's okay. Lapidary saw is a little bit different, but with wire saw, you can etch both sides with no problem, and it actually looks just as good, sometimes better on the side that's not finished. So I will etch both sides, even if I only finish one side. If that makes sense.
Perfect. Yeah, it does. Thank you. Sue, you have your hand up. Can we help you?
Yes. Bruce wanted to know how, Craig, how do you dispose of all the used chemicals?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah.
So these are all safe to put down drains and such, but what I will do is take my acid, which by the way, I don't recommend holding with bare hands. Watch this, and I'll put it into my neutralizing solution, and it will neutralize that real quick. And now that's just water with precipitate. There's nothing harmful. So I'll dump that down the drain. Nothing to it.
That's fantastic. Wow. And now that you can really tell a difference when you put that in there. It did foam up, but if it was baking soda, it would have overflown. Wow. Do we have any other?
So I will add just quickly storage tips. If you live in Arizona, you can store it wherever and however you like because your humidity never gets high enough to matter. In Minnesota, Georgia, Florida, we get a lot of humidity. If you leave it coated and it was prepped correctly, you should never have to do anything with it. Again, these are things that I take for outreach. They get handled by thousands of greasy hands. They don't get cleaned, and there's no problem. So if you're really worried about it, if you live in Hawaii and you're like, oh my God, we have 100% humidity, it rains every day, and you're really nervous about it, again, it should still hold. But if you want to be extra cautious, put it in a desiccator or in an enclosed space with desiccant. If you can keep your humidity below 20%, it's never going to rust. You can take an alloy straight out of the ground, cut it, throw it in a chamber that's 20% humidity or less, it's never going to rust. So if that's your concern, obviously you want to keep moisture away from it. But by and large, if you leave the coating on, you should be safe in any environment. I wouldn't take it in the pool. I wouldn't take it in the ocean. But outside of that, you should be in good shape.
Now, I know that you showed us coating one side. You said normally you would coat the other.
Yep.
Do you worry about the crust line at all? Is there any care to that one at all?
No, I usually do coat that rust there, the crust line, just because again, if it's not coated and sealed, I don't want any pockets that are open that can start the process. And if there's going to be a rust process starting, it's going to be along the crust most often. That was the most chloride rich, that was exposed. There's probably some residual rust. I don't like to clean the crust completely after it's stabilized. The rust should not actually be in contact with the iron because there should be a layer of basically carbon in between that protects it. But if moisture gets there and that rust bleeds into it, it can bleed around the edges. And it's not that it's an invasive rust, but it looks terrible. You get brown spots under your sealant. So yes, I do seal it. And it seems to work well. If you need to redo it, you do just what I did here. I wouldn't use alcohol, I'd use lacquer thinner or what is fingernail polish remover?
Acetone.
Acetone.
Yeah.
And just take it off. Again, take your CLR, rub it around the edges. If you want to take a toothbrush, that's a great way to do it. Toothbrush the edges with some CLR, throw it back in your alcohol, wipe it clean, dry it. And you don't need to dry it for 24 hours. You shouldn't have been exposing it to water. It should just be alcohol. So I get it warm, let it dry completely, get the alcohol off it, and respray it. Easy fix.
I love the fact that you're pointing out, like, don't be scared to give these things a try. If everything goes south and the train comes off the tracks, here you go. Acetone it down. All you need to do is get it to 230 or 240 grit and start the process all over again.
I usually, to be clear, as a seller, I sit on mine for at least 7 days, whether I'm refinishing for somebody or I'm selling. And if I'm selling, I actually usually sit on them for a couple months just to be extra sure. But at least 7 days, because in 7 days, you will usually see the beginnings of brown spots or streaks if there are going to be any. In that case, I would just take off the coating, give it a quick CLR, dry it or get it, re-alcoholed, clean it off, dry it again briefly so all the alcohol evaporates, and then reseal it and re-weight. If it rusts on you and you actually have rusted cracks, then you're going to need to sand it down. Squirt it with that and start the process over. Just sand it to 240, re-etch it, neutralize it, and do exactly the same steps over again. And you should be in good shape. It is possible that it wasn't stabilized enough, but to be completely honest, even if it's not completely stable, if the prep is correct and it's dried appropriately and it's sealed, even if it's not 100% stable, it should last you decades, or longer. So I would not, unless there's something really weird, put it through electrolysis again. I used to do that, and it's a waste. You don't need to do that.
Well, Craig, I'm super honored that you came to us and said, hey, look, everyone's asking me. Everyone comes to me and wants me to do my stuff. Can you help me get this information out so people will leave me alone? So yes, everyone leave Craig alone now, unless you're going to hire him. He gives no more free advice. These are his videos, double stamped and delivered. No, definitely appreciate you showing us the framework of the restoration process. We know as a professional, you're going to have some trade secrets that you're not going to show us that really cause things to pop. The infinity etch, is that what you were calling it? Where
the HD etch, yeah.
Yeah, HD etch. Yeah, I've seen some of your pieces, and they look phenomenal. So I don't expect you to give those inner secrets away. But you've given us enough information where we should feel empowered to start the process on our own, especially on some lower dollar per gram items, and have a success and build on it from there. And like I said, if something goes south, just start over again. So,
yep.
Craig, I'm going to give you the last chance to say anything that's been on your mind, if you have anything.
My mind is a blank slate, Topher.
Oh, wow. Well, look forward to doing more stuff with you for sure. We're gonna be partnering with Minnesota Meteorites in Tucson this year to do at least a live sale or an after hours VIP access sale. We haven't really finalized it, but stay tuned for that, everyone. I guess now would be a good time for everyone who's been so polite, and we actually have a really big crowd with us today with short notice. Please, you can unmute yourself and shower him with love. Show how much you make him feel awkward.
Oh, I'm always awkward.
Good stuff, Craig. Thank you.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. I appreciate you watching all 3 episodes, hitting the like button and all that kind of crap. But more importantly, thank you for Craig being here, making some time available and sharing this information with us. Now, we all don't have any reason not to collect space.
That's right. More than anything, that's what I want. There are so many people afraid of irons. Don't be afraid of irons. Irons are doable. You're good.
Yeah. And join the Facebook group for Topher Spin Meteorites, as well as Minnesota Meteorites. And ask questions. Try it. Go there. We have a pretty tight community online. So you know, we'll guide you through the process. It probably won't be me, but all right, guys. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
Good stuff, man.